Welcome back, everyone. We are experiencing some technical difficulties right now all day long here, really starting since 4 in the morning. We've been broadcasting live from around the region, and we've been showing the devastation firsthand. You know, we've seen so many people, both even in the media world, obviously, take all these power hits and have major substantive damage, and we're having something to our switcher, a little too much information, maybe inside information as to you. In fact, we can't even see ourselves up right now. So
put it this way, the difficulty that you're having in calling your neighbor or your mother or whomever.
Much more significant here. There we are. So what I'd like to do, Andrew, a little old-time radio almost with us, if we could. Today, if those of you who do have power, obviously, if you can see us, you do. What we saw was kind of a bisection. We've been talking, obviously, about the major issue right now. The primary, secondary, third, and everything down the line is the storm and the recovery for our region, the outstanding issues that this region will face here in the short and the long term. Listen, the principal issue is restoration of power. Once power can be restored, at least people have safe dwellings to have heat and light. After that, all the basic necessities, food, water, all that has to be restored in some way, shape, or form, and the deliverables from the authorities, whether it be local, state, or federal. And basically, you need all three right now if you're in New York or New Jersey in these affected areas. And unfortunately for the Garden State, that is basically top to down. So that's the issue. However, as I said, there was kind of an intersection today in a strange situation where we have an election on Tuesday. We've talked nothing about the political election that's coming up on Tuesday that will decide, among other things, our next president, possibly the control of the U.S. Senate, the House, huge issues that lay before us in addition to all the local elections. But today, the President of the United States was the commander-in-chief. He wasn't the campaigner-in-chief, and he came to New Jersey where, in what was one of his harshest political critics, and the chief surrogate, you would argue, or at least certainly one of them for Mitt Romney, the two of them were hand-in-hand and simpatico in terms of the same common interest to help New Jersey get back on its feet here. And it was a mutual admiration society, and it was something inconceivable a week ago.
That it was.
So what I'd like you to do is just take a look at really what was and is a strange dynamic, political dynamic that played out today. In the final sprint to Election Day, both candidates, they've been angling for any advantage. And today in New Jersey, President Obama had the biggest one of all, the power of the presidency. Off the campaign trail for a third straight day, President Obama surveyed the damage along a nearly 60-mile stretch of the Jersey Shore with Governor Chris Christie.
We are here for you, and we will not forget. We will follow up to make sure that you get all the help that you need until you've rebuilt.
Obama and Christie are a very unlikely pairing with less than a week until Election Day. The blunt, brash Republican governor is one of Mitt Romney's most staunch supporters. But with his state facing historic devastation and a massive rebuilding, Christie welcomed the president's help.
He has worked incredibly closely with me since before the storm hit. I think this is our 6th conversation since the weekend, and it's been a great working relationship.
In such a tight race, Romney couldn't afford to lose another day on the campaign trail. Today, he was in Florida, a state that's essentially a must-win for him. Romney set aside his usual attacks, and he struck a more subdued, optimistic tone.
This is a turning point in American history.
His only fleeting reference to the president?
It's time to take a new path of bold, aggressive change.
And Governor Christie actually getting a little bit of grief from some conservative outlets today for being as amenable to the president as he has been over the last couple of days. And you could argue that they both have the same interest at stake today. They're both the chief executives, one of New Jersey, one of the United States, working together in an emergency situation. You could also argue that there's both an electoral advantage to both men working together. President Obama obviously wants to foster a sense of bipartisanship less than a week to the election.
I'm going to, at the risk of naivete or Pollyannish sentiment, believe that both the president and the governor of New Jersey both had the best interests of the affected Americans, in this particular case, New Jerseyans, but the president obviously is speaking to and dealing with states up and down the Atlantic seaboard.
I'll just cynically add that there is also a political advantage to both sides, to
Fair
both
enough.
men working
But
together.
my point is, political calculations are part of every election season. And what I don't understand from an optical standpoint is what the Romney, it doesn't look good, I don't think, if people are campaigning and criticizing. There's no upside for Mitt Romney right now. The guy can't win, okay? In that there's a natural disaster. Everyone wants to rally around effective Americans, literally 6 million Americans, if not 7, that don't have power right now. At the same end, the president gets to act presidential, okay, albeit through a natural tragedy. I don't know how this plays out politically, but on the optics of it, it doesn't look really good for Mitt Romney.
And even yesterday, Mitt Romney turned a rally in Dayton that was supposed to be a campaign rally into a disaster relief event. He had people bringing supplies and things like that. But that has not continued. He has not continued doing that with all of his events. He's gone back
and
to...
the president is scheduled, by the way, to begin campaigning again tomorrow. And if anyone asked my unsolicited advice, and they're not, I think this is where people want to see presidential behavior. People want to see people in elected office do what the president did today. Go to the affected area, pledge federal relief here, pledge to cut through the bureaucracy and the red tape that we saw dog this country even after 9/11 and certainly after Katrina right now. People don't want to see politics. People want to see fellow Americans hurting, barely getting by right now, and really worrying what the next day will hold as they sit without power, light here, and abandoned and cut off in many ways from the basic necessities of life. They want not politics, they want to see leadership. By all accounts, the president gave that today here, and I think he'd be best served focusing on that role instead of trying to hit Florida, trying to hit Ohio, and trying to hit the rest. Again, easy for me to say I'm not running for office right now, but I think that's what people want to see, especially Republican and Democrat working together for the same common goal, which is the affected American.
I think there are a lot of people who would like to see that, but I also think, and I understand the nervousness from the campaign managers of both campaigns, you don't just want to sit and run the clock out with less than a week to go before the election. You feel like you have to do something proactive to try to make your case.
Now, let me pivot to the next question, which today was Halloween. People aren't going out on Halloween because you got power lines down, you got trees perilously hanging over, you don't have lights for the kids to walk out here. That makes sense. Tuesday, Andrew, 6 days from today, we're scheduled to have probably the most important election in recent memory. In New Jersey, 90% of the people, or at least a great percentage of them, don't have any power. They can't even see boardwalks anymore because they're now in the ocean. Boats are in the streets here. It looks as if a bomb hit certain places. In New York, in large portions of it, you have devastation in underwater communities. I could say the same thing about Connecticut here, where the whole state, more than 90% is under, basically without power here and wondering where they go. There are other affected communities as well. My only point is, in 6 days, how do you have, I understand you have you need a constitutional amendment to change the date here, but you will have so many disenfranchised voters. You're not even going to have electric voting machines. They'd have to do some paper ballots, and can you imagine? I accept and understand the reality that the election's going to go on Tuesday, but we have such a polarized country. We could very well have a situation with a depressed vote right now, where one could win the electoral and the other one could win the popular vote, and then all the questions that would be attached to legitimacy and all the other questions that we would hope to avoid would come up again. I don't have an answer to this, but I can just see major problems coming down the road, and poor people who would love to maybe have their constitutional right of representation and the right to choose that representation taken from them by an act of Mother Nature. And to me, I know there's going to be outstanding questions on Wednesday, a week from today, when we consider the day after the election of what might have been.
All right, to several of those points. First of all, the storm increases the likelihood that you'll have a difference between the popular vote and the electoral vote, because these are relatively blue states by all accounts, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and it's likely that that would depress the turnout and depress the vote for President Obama. You simply can't have the Mid-Atlantic region postpone elections by a day or by a week. I mean, just imagine logistically how difficult that would be.
Everybody postpones by a day or nobody postpones.
Right. Now, there may be voting may be possible even in places that don't have power, because a lot of the voting centers are at schools or town centers or municipal buildings that have backup generators and tend to be sort of first priorities for getting systems turned on again. My polling place...
Andrew, I'm not trying to be flip on that, but you take the city of Hoboken, you have 20,000 people stranded. I mean, I don't know how, and the last thing on their minds, understandably so, is an election. They don't care. Now, we're talking about the presidential. What about contested congressional races? I mean, in Long Island, I moderated a debate that you know about, right? That has huge issues right now before them about just getting forward. I mean, I can go into areas up and down the Eastern Coast where you will have potentially different results had everybody gotten to choose. Again, I'm not coming with a better alternative. America can't all of a sudden say, never mind, we're not voting on Tuesday, let's push it forward. And Wednesday, it's not going to be perfect either, okay? So I'm not coming with a different solution, but I am telling you, I spent the day here on this set earlier. You can forecast certain issues that are going to happen. And from an electoral standpoint, there will be major questions that are coming out on Wednesday. Nobody wants to talk about them right now, and I understand why. We have bigger fish to fry, as Governor Christie said right there. And he said, quote unquote, I don't give a damn about the election, and I believe him. It's going to be a problem, and there's going to be a lot of other problems that are going to come down where people are hungry right now. People need to get something. If they can't get them help here, you're going to have desperate people. I'm just saying there are forecastable issues here over the next few days. I believe the officials at every level are doing everything they possibly can to expedite the aid here. So I don't think there's any bottlenecking. I don't think there's any, as we saw, stovepiping talking about, where it's agency against agency. I am saying part of what this format's about is talking about what comes next, not just what happened. And I'm saying the election is going to be definitely, I believe, something that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday with a lot of questions of what if. And imagine you're a candidate who all of a sudden lost because people couldn't turn out.
And the sense that I get is that the officials who would otherwise be looking at this and trying to figure out alternatives are so preoccupied with so many other more pressing issues at this point that I'm not sure that there's game plans in mind for how to try to remedy this.
No, I mean, it's just the questions are legion as to where and what happens 6 days from now. But again, it is so low in the totem pole in terms of major concerns here facing our region. I just thought it would be worthwhile bringing it up. Okay, we jump to a quick commercial break. RFL continues right after this. Please stay with us.